everybody, John French here from Heart and Soul Farm. This is one of my first videos that I'm going to attempt to record and then share with some of my customers and people interested in natural, organic, ecological gardening. I won't tell too much of my story in this video, even though it's the first one I'm making. I plan to make another one just kind of introducing myself and how I got started and what I'm doing. The purpose of the one today is I wanted to start doing my video logs as I started this season, so 2018. This is February 28th, and it's the first planting, or I guess seeding date that I have scheduled for the garden produce. And I'm going to be seeding tomatoes today, so I'll show you what I do to seed my tomatoes. It worked for me last year. The plants were quite healthy, and they produced well in the greenhouse or tunnel frame that I have at the farm property that I rent. So yeah, I'll get started. First thing, I'll just show you this room. This was sort of a bedroom that I was renovating, and then it turned into my microgreens dedicated space. So I have my microgreens growing in here. That's going to be, that shelf there is what I just set up a couple of days ago, and that's where the tomatoes will be growing under the lights for the approximately 8 weeks or so. I mean, 8 weeks is the plan, and then depends on weather when they get planted out. So I'll show you some seed stock here. I have, I guess, 3 companies represented in what I have here today. One company is William Dam Seeds. So I have ordered my Black Krim, and I also ordered red Brandywine tomatoes from them. Super reliable. I've had great success with all of the seeds that I've ordered from them. So I'm going to continue with that. So that's, William Dam. That's a couple of varieties of tomatoes there. It's kind of the slicing varieties. Then another company I use is relatively local to Ontario. So is William Dam, local to Ontario. I like to use as many local producers as I can. This is the Cottage Gardener, and I have quite a few varieties of mainly cherry tomatoes. Actually, all my cherry tomatoes come from the Cottage Gardener company, and they're great. I've met them at the Guelph Organic Conference. Family-based business, also very reliable seeds, and I've had a couple, one in particular, this tomato called the Persimmon. I ordered a few extra of these because I'd like to share them with people at the market, because it's a great tomato, and had great success with it the first year I grew it. So there's those 2 companies, and the last one is a home gardener out of Peterborough. Her name is Jillian Bishop, and she's called the Urban Tomato, and she does her gardening in her backyard of her home and grows some heirloom varieties of tomato. This is the Opalco Paste. This one I'm going to try in the field this year. I did do it in the greenhouse last year. Did have success with it, but I'd like to try growing it outdoors, outside of the tunnel. And then I also got a small red slicer from Jillian, from the Urban Tomato. Oops, that one's been opened. It's just checking the count of the seeds. So those are the seeds I'm going to use. After that, and I will show you this, I start my seeds in a 72 cell tray. So there's 72 plants growing at the same time in there. And they won't grow continually in there. They will grow for probably about six weeks or so, and then the last 2 to 3 weeks I have a little tiny tunnel, and I might share that. I have shared that video before, but a little tiny tunnel that I built in my backyard is only 4 feet wide, 35 feet long, and then about 2 or 3 feet high, so I can take the tomatoes out and start, giving some, getting them hardened off a little bit, and then also just provides more space on the indoors. But I will eventually plant them into these peat pots At about, so 5-6 weeks, maybe 7. It kind of depends on timing and weather and things like that, and the growth of the plants themselves. And then they'll stay in these pots until I plant them out into the greenhouse. And the greenhouse planting date is hopefully May 1st. Could be a little bit earlier, might be a little bit later. Kind of depends on my schedule and how things are going. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do, and I'll stop here and see what happens next. Okay, so we're back here about to get started planting the tomatoes, and I'll show you some the soil products I use for a couple of reasons. This one isn't the one I'm going to use for the tomatoes, but it's the product that I use for my microgreens. It has a little less nutrition. It's meant for seedlings and sprouts, so not meant for long-term growing, but just to get things started. And because I'm going to be growing the tomatoes for a fair bit of time, I'm going to use another mix. But this one I use, it's approved for organic culture. I'm not a certified organic farmer yet, but my plan is to eventually do that. I'm not positive about getting certified, but I want to use the same standard. I'm chemical free and pesticide free and that kind of thing, so I like to still use all the certified organic products. So there's another, so Omri Canada, that's kind of a list of the products that you can use for organic culture. And this is the product that I'll use today. So it's called ProMix. It says there, premium organic vegetable and herb mix. So it has a little bit more nutrition than the agro mix. And as I said, because the tomatoes will be growing for a bit of time, it's important that they have enough nutrition for that 8 weeks or so that they'll be in there. So I empty all that stuff in this garbage can. There you go. So got a little scooper in there. I just keep that nice and full because I use a lot when I'm planting the microgreens, and it's available. It's at the table that I'm working at. So yeah, I'll carry on. Maybe I'll just set this up and show you what I do next. So I'll take my tray like this and fill it with, sort of just pour the soil right over top of the tray. Spread it around, making sure to get all the cells. What I notice is, if I'm not paying close attention, the cells closest to the edge don't get as much soil, so I you can see I sort of bank it up with my hand and then sort of drag it along and go around, sort of focusing on the edge because the middle always seems to have enough. So I'll go around like that. And then once it's level to the top, I don't know if you can see that, but once it's level to the top, I just sort of brush it around. And then what I want to do is I'll take one of my flats that I use for the microgreens and that these will eventually sit in, like this, and hopefully this isn't too loud. Sort of let it bang down a bit. And then it sort of sinks the soil into the cells a little bit deeper. And then sort of really lightly, I'm not trying to crush the soil in there. I don't want it too compacted, but I don't want too much airspace either. So I just press down with another one, kind of nesting it on top, like that. Now I have this, there's sort of little spaces in the top of each one. And what I'll be doing is placing one seed per cell. So I'll be doing half a cell of one variety, half a tray of one variety, then another variety. So there'll be 2 varieties per tray. And I'll put one seed per cell, and then I'm going to cover the top again with more soil, and that sort of gives me the depth that I need. I'm going down about a half of an inch into the soil with the seeds. Just sort of placing them. I'll place them in there. I'll just push them a little bit with my finger, and then I'll put the soil on top. And again, after I put the soil on top, pushing it down, watering it in making sure I label, which is something I didn't do last year, and it became a bit of a headache. So I just picked up some popsicle sticks today at the dollar store. I prefer wood or metal over plastic. For this purpose, wood works, and hopefully it doesn't the ink doesn't bleed out or something over the season. But I'll see how it works. I'd rather do that. Plastic pollution is a big thing for me, and I try to use as little as possible. I know my trays are made of plastic, but it's something I can reuse over and over again, and they are recyclable plastic, so that's important. Okay, so I'm going to start planting now, and I'll put it on time lapse so you can just sort of get an idea of what's taking place. Hey, so I filmed that time lapse of me planting the seeds there in the trays, and here they are on the shelves. You can see in the back there, the other row, they're all labeled. I don't turn the lights on yet. It's not really necessary. Probably wait a few days, but I will turn them on before I actually see the germination. Because as soon as they come up, and if there's light available to them, they won't get too leggy. Leggy just means the stem will stretch out, reaching for the light, and they'll tend to lean over and just have weaker main stems. So I'll have the light on a little bit just before they break through the soil. And in terms of watering them in, so in these 1-inch trays, I just watered this one. I don't know if you can see it, but what I do is water it about halfway up the bottom of the tray, and then just the soil through wicking action will sort of suck up the water into the cells. And as far as watering, I'll always water the bottom of the tray. It's best to keep the top of the soil dry, especially once the seedlings come up. They can suffer from a disease, which I believe is either a mold or a fungus, that will kind of rot the stem close to the surface of the soil, and so I want to avoid that. So I'll bottom water them throughout their growing cycle inside here, and not overwatering them, allowing the soil to be moist, but roots do need air as well in order to grow, so you don't want to saturate them with water, but do want to keep them consistently moist. And then as far as temperature goes, the house I just keep at around 71. It could be warmer, but last year it was a similar temperature and the tomatoes did fine, so I'm gonna keep it the way it was, because they did grow quite strong and resilient last year, so no reason to change anything at this point unless I decide I really want to experiment with it. So that's the tomato planting session for 2018. Those are all the tomatoes I will plant, unless there's some sort of crop failure early on and I have time to plant more, but I don't anticipate that. So there you go. That was my first ever instructional video for Heart and Soul Farm. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something, and depending on where I post this, please like and share the video, and share it with your friends, and pass on the word that Heart and Soul Farm is now gonna be posting these educational videos, and I hope to see you out at the markets. Okay, have a good day. Bye.